Welcome to the Midnight Storytellers Legacy Project. I'm Chloe, and if you make yourselves comfortable, I have a story for you. In the city of Casablanca, in the days when everything was in black and white, and half the people there wore those old raincoats, there was a woman of Casablanca who had her life perfectly organized. She had two lovers. One came to her by day, the other entertained her by night. The clever bit was, neither man knew that the other one existed. The men adored this woman. They were very successful in their chosen professions. One was a thief, the other was a burglar, and they showered her with gifts. They loved her so much that they regularly proposed marriage. And the woman so far had turned them down because she couldn't quite work out how to turn that situation to her advantage. And then one day she woke up and she'd solved it. She'd had the big idea. That next lunchtime, the woman made herself comfortable on the sofa with lover number one. Outside in the city streets, the traffic snarled and grumbled. But in that little living room, it was cool. The white curtains billowed in a breeze. The woman poured coffee for lover number one and got in close. And she said, "Oh, mast of my ship, oh, mast of my ship, you and I have known each other and loved each other for many years, and we are best of friends. I can't think why I turned down your offers of marriage, so now I'm going to accept. And besides, I've just found the perfect apartment for us to rent together. It's much bigger than this place, and it's in the best part of town, right near the Victory Gate. It's only 700 dinars a month. Let's get married and let's live there together." And lover number one spent a good part of that afternoon proving how delighted he was with her decision. That evening, on the roof of the apartment building, as was the custom then and still is now, the woman made herself comfortable with lover number two in a nest of cushions behind screens, behind huge potted plants. There were candles and lanterns and fairy lights. And she poured wine for lover number two, and she said, "Oh, keel of my ship." He liked that, so she did it again. "Oh, keel of my ship." If you really like the idea, you should try it at home. "Oh, keel of my ship, you and I have known each other and loved each other and been the best of friends for many years. Of course we should get married. I've been a fool to turn down your offers. And besides, I've just found the most gorgeous apartment to rent. It's only 700 dinars a month. It's much bigger than mine is now. And it's in the best part of town, right near the Victory Gate. Let's get married." And she set the date for the wedding. And lover number two spent the best part of that night proving how happy he was with her decision. Come the wedding day, the woman seemed unusually nervous. For a woman of her poise, her panache, her perfection, she really did seem rather unsettled, to the point that every half an hour or so, throughout the civil ceremony, and indeed at the party afterwards, she kept on rushing out of the room and disappearing, possibly to get some fresh air. But when she came back again, she was always out of breath, as if she'd been running. Anyway, the wedding day passed off smoothly enough, and married life began. And still, neither man knew that the other one existed. Husband number one would boast to his friends in the coffee house, "I never knew that being married could be so wonderful. My wife is beautiful, she is loving and kind, she cooks like a genie. It's amazing. Husband number 2 would boast to his friends in the steam baths, this woman is a genius with money. I mean, she cooks and she's gorgeous and all of that. But I've never known anybody make 800 dinars a month go so far. It was all going so well, until there came a summons into the city of Casablanca from the great robber baron of the mountains. The great robber baron of the mountains summoned all the crooks and criminals of Casablanca to a meeting out in the desert, and you obeyed the great robber baron of the mountains on pain of pain. So each in turn, the husbands came to their wife and said, well, I've got to go to this meeting. And to each in turn she smiled and said, my love, of course you must obey the great robber baron of the mountains. And you must keep your strength up so that we can enjoy our reunion afterwards. I will make food for you to take with you. And the woman shopped, cooked, and baked. And to each man, 12 hours apart, she gave a little package wrapped up in a blue and white napkin, a package of the most delicious, savory, spicy pastries and sticky things and sweet things and little bits of salad and everything you would want to take with you on a journey through the desert. And first of all, husband number 1 put the package in his saddlebag and got onto his camel and rode out of the city into the desert. And 12 hours later, husband number 2 put his package into the saddlebag and got upon his camel and rode out of the city across the sands. And some of you are thinking, just a minute, why didn't he take a vehicle? I'll tell you why. Vehicles have a tendency to break down out in the desert. Camels tend not to. But as the sun was setting and the desert night sky filled with stars and the sands began to glimmer silver, it was then that husband number 2 realized, it was years since he'd ridden a camel and bits of him were hurting he didn't know he had. At that moment, however, a little way ahead, he saw outlined the shapes of palm trees. There was an oasis. There was a flicker of firelight. Someone was already there. He rode into the oasis, and as was and still is the custom of the desert, the one who was already there welcomed him. Welcome, brother traveler. Sit with me. We will share our fire. We will share our news, and we will share our food. So the 2 men sat down side by side and took their packages of food out of the saddlebags, and they smiled when they saw that both of them had the same kind of blue and white napkin. Everyone had them in that part of the world. Then they spread out their food selection. And they smiled even more when the 2 halves of loaf fitted together exactly. Said one to the other, our wives must go to the same baker. But I think husband number 1 was slightly brighter than husband number 2. And he was looking at the exact match of savory pastries and dried dates and fresh figs and those sticky little sweet things. And he grew suspicious. He grew suspicious enough to demand the exact address in Casablanca of the other man. And then they glared at each other, and then they leapt back on their camels and galloped all the way back to the city and stormed up the steps to their apartment, kicked in the door, and started shouting at their wife, "You cheat, you harlot, you charlatan!" The woman came out of the inner room and looked at them and smiled her sweetest smile. She said, "My darlings, how could you expect me to choose between you? You are both so handsome, so loving and kind and generous. Honestly, it would have broken my heart to make that choice. Besides, we really do live rather well on our combined incomes. This apartment really is only 700 dinars a month. Do you really want to give that up? And a few minutes later, the husbands agreed to continue, just as things had always been, one by day and the other by night. And possibly, yes, they didn't want to give up their very comfortable lifestyle. Possibly they both adored that woman truly and deeply, so very much that they couldn't bear to give her up. And possibly they were thinking about the scandal that would erupt if truth got out among neighbours and friends. Or possibly, just possibly, there was another reason why they agreed so easily. Because when it was all settled, the woman kissed both of her husbands on the cheek and smiled very sweetly and said to them, "Now, my loves, you must hurry and get to that meeting out in the desert. Oh, and when you see my brother, the great robber baron of the mountains, you can tell him I'm happy with my husbands and my life." Thank you for watching.